John Pierpont Morgan, was born in Hartford, Connecticut on April 17, 1837. His paternal grandfather, Joseph, was a founder of the Aetna Insurance Company, and his father, Junius, became a partner in the prosperous dry goods business around the time he married Juliet Pierpont, the daughter of John Pierpont, a noted minister and poet. A sickly child suffering from seizures and other unexplained ailments, John spent long stretches isolated at home when, he and his parents frequented galleries and concerts, sparking a life fascinated by the arts. Finally, he attended Boston English High School. In 1854, Junius Morgan moved the family to London to start his new career as a partner in George Peabody & Co.'s banking business. Little John was sent to the Selig Institute in Switzerland, where he was fluent in French and showed an aptitude for mathematics, and then to University of Gothenburg in Germany. Morgan moved to New York after finishing his education in 1857 to serve as a clerk at Duncan Sherman & Co., the American branch of his father's company. Morgan was in New Orleans for business in an early illustration of his ingenuity, where he met a ship captain with a coffee boatload and no buyer. Morgan bought the coffee from his company's funds and then sold it to local merchants for profit. His success encouraged him to strike out on his own, and he continued to work with his father after founding John Pierpont Morgan & Co. in the early 1860s. Through his social circle in New York, J.P. Morgan grew up next to the popular merchant's daughter, Amelia Mamie Sturgis. In 1861, she was diagnosed with tuberculosis, and the lovebirds quickly married and moved to Algiers, hoping to spur a recovery. Nevertheless, despite Morgan's best attempts to nurse his bride back to health, she died in February 1862. Devastated, the young entrepreneur returned to New York and plunged into his work. He partnered with senior partner Charles Dabney in 1864 at his father's instigation to form Dabney, Morgan & Co. With Julius Morgan now leading the London banking company, the Morgans continued to grow their wealth and power by spinning overseas investments into foreign businesses. In the meantime, Pierpont started a new relationship with the daughter of New York lawyer Francis Louisa Fanny Tracy. They married and had 4 children: Louisa Pierpont Morgan, 1865, J.P. Morgan Jr., 1867 to 1943, and Anne Tracy Morgan. With Dabney's retirement in 1871, Pierpont joined forces with Philadelphia banker Anthony Drexel to found Drexel Morgan & Co. Pierpont was gradually growing into an outsized figure that would conquer the financial world because of his ties with the Peabody Company. Morgan had closed a highly useful relationship with the financial world of London. He was able to supply much needed capital from British banks to the increasingly growing industrial companies in the USA. In 1885, when he negotiated an agreement between 2 of the country's largest railroads, the New York Central Railroad and the Pennsylvania Railroad, he began reorganizing railroads. He reorganized 2 more large railroads in 1886 to strengthen their financial base. Morgan became a member of the board of directors of these other railroads in the wake of this corporate restructuring, thus having considerable control over them. Between 1885 and 1888, he extended his influence to lines based in Pennsylvania and Ohio, and following the financial panic in 1893, he was called upon to rehabilitate a large number of the country's leading railways, including the Southern Railroad, the Erie Railroad, and the Northern Pacific. The prolific businessman helped attain stability of the railroad rate and prevented overly competitive rivalry in the East. After gaining ownership of most of the railroad assets that he reorganized, he became one of the most influential railroad magnates in the nation, owning about 5,000 miles, 8,000 kilometers of American railroads in 1902. After his father's death in 1890, Morgan's life and career took another turn. He broke new ground after a decade of railroad restructuring by arranging for a merger of Edison General Electric and Thomas Houston Company to form General Electric in 1892. Also, the lifelong art collector continued to develop an already remarkable collection of valuable works exponentially. During the aftermath of the panic in 1893, the enormous extent of Morgan's influence came to light. With U.S. gold reserves gravely exhausted, Morgan created a syndicate of foreign investors willing to supply gold on 30-year bonds in return for a favorable rate. He then reassured a skeptical president, Grover Cleveland, by citing an obscure statute of 1862 which gave the Treasury Secretary the power to withdraw such a transaction without congressional approval. In early 1895, the syndicate bought and immediately resold the bonds, stabilizing the fragile economy. After Drexel's death that year, Pierpont reorganized the business again into J.P. Morgan and Co. By funding the establishment of Federal Steel in 1898, the company quickly became a major player in the steel market. 3 years later, Morgan incorporated the companies into the U.S. Steel after purchasing the Steel Corporation from Andrew Carnegie for nearly $500 million, creating the first billion-dollar company. The 1907 panic was a financial crisis which nearly crippled the American economy. Big banks in New York were on the brink of bankruptcy, and there was no relief plan for them until J.P. Morgan stepped in to resolve the situation. Treasury Secretary George B. Cortelyou earmarked $35 million for federal money to deposit into banks in New York. Morgan then met with the nation's leading financiers in his house in New York, where he pressured them to come up with a plan to manage the crisis. Morgan put together a team of bank and trusted executives to funnel money between banks, obtain additional foreign credit lines, and buy healthy corporations' plummeting stocks. As demonstrated in some of the business mistakes he made, Morgan didn't always invest well. In 1900, inventor Nikola Tesla persuaded Morgan that he would be able to develop a transatlantic wireless communication network that would outperform the wireless telegraph system based on short-range radio waves. Morgan decided to give Tesla $150,000, the equivalent of $4,609,800 in 2019. To build the device in exchange for a 51% patent rights. Tesla then demanded further funding to implement new changes he made, but Morgan refused to reinvest. With no additional investment capital available, the Wardenclyffe project was abandoned in 1906 and never went into operation. J.P. 1902 Morgan and Co. financed the establishment of the International Mercantile Marine Company (IMMC), an Atlantic shipping firm that absorbed many large American and British lines to monopolize the shipping industry. The business proved not so successful following the unplanned nature of sea transport and some government policies. Pierpont was a notable collector of books, pictures, sculptures, clocks, and other art items. Many of the artworks are loaned or donated to the Metropolitan Museum of Arts, and others housed in his London house and private library on 36th Street, close to Madison Avenue in New York City. The British artist and art critic Roger Fry worked for the museum for several years and in turn as a collector for Morgan. His son, J.P. Morgan Jr., made the Pierpont Morgan Library a public institution in 1924 as a tribute to his father, retaining as its first director Belle da Costa Green, the private librarian of his father. Morgan was a benefactor of the American Museum of National History, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, Groton School, Harvard University, particularly its medical school, Trinity College, New York City Lying-in Hospital, and the New York Trade School. By the turn of the century, Morgan had become one of the most important collectors of gems in America and had assembled the most important collection of gems in the United States as well as American gemstones. Over 1,000 pieces under their chief gemologist, George Frederick Kunz, Tiffany & Co. assembled the first collections. The collections was displayed in 1889 Paris World Fair and received 2 golden awards, attracting the attention of leading scholars, lapidaries, and the general public. The prominent financier died in Rome, Italy on March 31, 1913 at the age of 75. The New York Stock Exchange closed in his honor until noon of April 14, the day of his funeral. He was buried in a Hartford cemetery in a mausoleum of the Morgan family. Thank you very much for watching our videos. We'd like to give you another exciting video for you to enjoy next. Still, before then, our team will be thrilled if you can like this video and share it with your friends on social media. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss other exciting videos like this. Look at your screen now and see 2 other videos we handpicked for you to enjoy next. We love you.